What's going on, guys? Welcome to another reaction video. This one has been a little bit of more of a series. This is Insider's channel where they've shared a variety or a list of things behind the scenes related. And in today's episode here, before I share and react with you all here, as you may have known in previous things that I've discussed, sorry, on this channel, is my love for film. I've referenced that once you see the end of a film, you have the vast list, a majority of all the people that have worked, because when you think of a Hollywood movie, what comes to mind? You have the director, actors, the camera guy, the stunt people, the costume, the makeup, the lighting, special effects. I could just keep going on and on and on. And it basically takes a team effort to make your favorite movie that you've seen in the past or that's coming up. And also, as you might see in this thing here, is sorry, got distracted there for a second. Um, as you see here, would you work in these surprising movie, TV shows jobs? The caption of this title is there's certain jobs that you may have not known that may have existed, if I phrase that right, in the behind the scenes of creating movies and TV shows. So, without further ado, make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Would you want to do any type of these sorts of jobs behind the scenes in the camera? And let's see. And I'll kind of pause in between and then give my thoughts at the end here. So here we go. Whoop.
This might look like an ordinary pool ball, but listen to the sound it makes in action. Pieces like this are created by prop masters who are known for constantly inventing new kinds of silent props. This is just one of many surprising behind the scenes roles in movies and TV. And while you might not have heard of them before, Hollywood wouldn't be the same without them. Costumes need to realistically reflect the action, but because scenes are often shot out of order, costume designers need to be creative with everything from sweat stains to rips and blood. That's where breakdown artists like Sarah Blostein come in, who's worked on numerous projects, including The Boys. First, Sarah has to think about how clothes are destroyed naturally. For example, fresh blood stains are a much brighter shade of red than the darker color you see hours later once the blood is dried. And bullet impacts are usually recreated safely with squibs on set, which will blow a huge hole through the fabric. But in reality, bullet holes are actually much smaller. So Sarah uses a craft knife to create more realistic looking damage. All this realism, however, needs to align with production continuity. So while it might look like Frenchie is sweating through his shirt here, those stains are really a mixture of water and paint. That way, the stains will remain on his shirt no matter how many times the scene is shot, or even if it's actually filmed before the action.
So before we go into the next one, I kind of obviously, as I mentioned, costume designers, that goes to show, especially in detail, of like, I'll admit, I'm a guy that sweats even stepping outside. But just to make it seem realistic in a movie or TV show, you saw Bruce Willis there from Die Hard. They'll just act and make like if it is sweat or even the detail of blood and a bullet hole and certain things. And that's what it takes to become a costume designer. So anybody out there that's into designing clothing or has the wish of doing something like this in film, this is part of the job. So that's something you'll want to take a look at. Let's continue.
Sometimes actors need to eat something on camera that they couldn't or that might be unsafe to consume in real life. Unique culinary dilemmas call for an edible prop maker like Melissa McSorley. For example, the character Ms. Crumble from Netflix's Daybreak feasts on live maggots by the handful. All animals, including maggots, are protected from harm on film sets, so Melissa needed to come up with a lifelike replacement. First, she looks for something that has the same texture and color, like gelatin. This mixture ranged from caramel to a mix of coconut and almond milk to account for the maggots that become darker as they age. Her edible maggots were made to taste good, but the ingredients also provided just the right bounciness to make the viewer squirm. To create this edible cockroach for Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, she had to get even more creative. Melissa started with a date. She then meticulously placed chili threads and seaweed strands into it for legs and antennae. And to make sure that it was 100% edible, she used the date's natural stickiness as opposed to glue to keep it all together. Sometimes, even if a food prop won't be eaten on camera, Melissa still needs to make a replica. To make sure the kitchen environment stayed sanitary in this scene from Homecoming, Melissa made fake raw chicken guts out of noodles and kumquats.
So right there, another one that I didn't know about. If you've all seen the show Fear Factor, I would assume that that's legitimate because just their reactions and things like that, as to where you're on a movie set and everything is pretend and it's not all real. They go as far as to literally make a fake cockroach or food or just things that look nasty and something that would probably upset your stomach. They go into those specific details in crafting and creating just the tiniest little things that you may not have noticed. So pretty interesting. Let's keep going.
Many actors may have perfectly straight, white teeth, but the characters they play on screen call for something completely different. So, dental technician Gary Archer spends his time making convincing fake dentures. After molding and 3D scanning, Gary fabricates the teeth out of acrylic and then uses dental safe staining to add a nice shine or yellowing. That's how Gary gave Austin Powers his signature smile. Gary also has to adapt fake teeth for whatever the script calls for in a scene. By simply painting one of Austin Powers' teeth black, it looked like a gap under just the right lighting. And in this moment from Office Christmas Party, Gary attached that one fake tooth with wax, so all the actor needed to do was flick his tongue and it would pop right out. Gary also used wax to attach a pair of breakaway braces to this aligner. The prosthetic was placed over Kirsten Dunst's real teeth for On Becoming a God in Central Florida.
That right there is another surprising one for myself. What you all think there? Yes, there is people that work in the dental field, and I would have assumed the first one that you just saw is Austin Powers, which is it's funny, it's silly, but looking back on it now, I would have assumed they just painted his teeth, but as you just saw, they literally make fake teeth for it. And that reminded me that it's kind of interesting how they really, I might be wrong, but on The Hangover, where I believe his name is Ed Helms, when he removes his tooth. So, how to make fake teeth. That's a job. Let's keep going.
The hardest props to control on set are sometimes the most ordinary objects. A paper bag and a cup full of ice can create unwanted noise that interferes with dialogue. So, prop maker Tim Schultz devised a solution that turned into a business: silent props. These props look identical to their real counterparts, but Tim makes them out of material that makes much less sound. Instead of using a regular paper bag, he uses a replica using fibrous, non-woven fabric, similar to coffee filters. He adds distinct paper bag qualities like a jagged edge and a stamp on the bottom. Even with groceries inside, you won't hear much. His most used material is vinyl, which can be transformed into potato chip bags or cellophane flour wrap, as seen in this shot from the Kaminsky method.
I have no idea.
But silent props don't always have to be made from scratch. For example, Tim figured out that he could cut down the noise on real paper bags by spraying them so that Melissa McCarthy could wear them on her hand and head in 2014's Tammy. And when doing pool hall scenes on shows like Friday Night Lights, prop maker Scott Reeder took racquetballs and painted them to look like pool balls. Same size, same look, but much quieter.
So that right there is interesting because when I now open up a bag of chips and it ends up becoming that it's too loud and I'm having a conversation with somebody, if we were shooting a film, the director, if I was directing it or with two people like that, hypothetical scene, you wouldn't want that sound to overtake the conversation. So that makes sense to have quiet props, which you may not have heard of, and it's makes it still even movable. And then especially in a pool hall where you hit the pool, all the balls in a pool table, and those make a lot of noise. And with the setting of a bar scene, it tends to overtake even with the sound of music, people talking, and it would be a conversation between two characters and stuff like that. So quiet props. Who knew?
Organizing tens of thousands of extras can be a logistical nightmare. So, digital crowd supervisors are tasked with making crowds look larger than they actually are. In order to fill a stadium with over 26,000 spectators in Ted Lasso, Barnstorm VFX's Lawson Deming started by gathering a small group of real people. These plate extras were filmed in front of a green screen and then placed into the digital crowd individually to fill out any empty seats. When working on the show Insecure, Barnstorm used what's known as crowd tiling, where a small group is moved around to several different positions to create the illusion of a much larger crowd. Crowd supervisors had to make sure these groups didn't look too similar, so they mix up both their configuration and outfits. When it comes to wider shots like this one of Nelson Road Stadium in Ted Lasso, Lawson used digital doubles. Through sophisticated software, he was capable of taking whole groups of digital spectators and assigning them specific actions, like booing or cheering, based on motion capture performances of a real actor. Nailing
So before we watch this next part, as some of you may have known, there is a particular job of films, or sorry, a particular job called extras. And I would assume back then they hired hundreds and maybe even thousands. So to save money, they maybe hire about 10 to 15 people and then make them wear different clothing and then spread them out as you just saw. So they'll still hire people, but then they hire those extras and then people work behind the scenes to make it seem to any of I have not seen Ted Lasso, I'm sorry, but to make it seem like a stadium is full like in a show like Ted Lasso. So let's keep going.
down the look of a well known person in a movie is one challenge, but makeup and fake facial hair alone won't cut it if a performer can't also move like them. Professional movement coaches like Polly Bennett can help with that. She has worked with numerous actors, including Rami Malek on his portrayal of Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. While they watched hours of reference footage to learn the entirety of Queen's Live Aid performance, Polly also dove into Freddie Mercury's past to figure out how he moved and danced the way he did. He was a boxer and a runner, which is why he could change direction so quickly on stage. Movement coaching is also useful for any super complex choreography. Take Last Night in Soho, where Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie had to imitate each other's movements with precise timing for the film's mirroring and dancing shots. Movement coach Jennifer White had the actresses imitate each other in front of a mirrorless frame. And for this mirrored dance sequence, she choreographed all the dance moves in sync with the camera so Anya and Thomasin could dodge the camera operator at just the right moment. It's just as important for every background actor to hit their mark. While Polly worked with Austin Butler to move on stage just like the king of rock and roll in Elvis, she also worked with all the extras in the crowd to make sure they were giving the best reactions imaginable. As if they were really seeing Elvis live.
So I would have assumed that in something like that, it's considered just acting, but at the same time, there's a role for that, movement coach. And especially when you're portraying a famous person, you need to copy their mannerisms, their movements, every single tone. And something like Bohemian Rhapsody, a very good film. Rami Malek, and you all can look this up on the internet. At the end of the Live Aid concert scene, which happened in real life, he did a pretty good job in learning in the movements of how the real Freddie Mercury would act and seeing him perform. And the voiceover person said that Freddie Mercury was a boxer, which I didn't know, which was interesting. But yeah, another job. You want to teach actors to move in a certain way, not just act, but move in a certain particular way and mannerisms when they're portraying a character in film.
Some practical creatures need more complex movements than wires alone can provide. So these animatronics will run on sophisticated computerized mechanics called servos. But like any puppet, they're only as good as the puppeteer, or in this case, roboticist, behind them. As Spectral Motion's head of animatronics, Mark Satrakian controls motors so that they'll convey realistic expressions, like the scrunt from Lady in the Water, which was designed with mechanics to move its soft lips back and reveal its teeth. Other times, Mark programs animatronic pieces that an actor will have to wear, like the performer who played Edward the Troll in Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. Mark gave him hands capable of realistic compression and a mask that could flare its nostrils. The key to being a great animatronic puppeteer is always finding new technology to improve your creations. For example, this modern servo could move in a variety of unique directions. Mark knew it would fit perfectly into a white spike's neck, allowing this terrifying creature from the Tomorrow War to tilt its head.
On this job, I wouldn't say it's surprising for myself to maybe to you all it is. The reason being is I've known films that use puppeteering to a certain extent, like i.e. Jim Henson, who did the Muppets, Sesame Street, that was puppeteering. But when it involves like film, I know that they've created just like a person in costume, but as technology advances and everything advances, you basically have to advance with it. So they'll have, if you've all seen my video, check it out. How they do the Jurassic Park films, they would have people in suits. And from switching from people to suits, they end up going to people just wearing a unitard with a plastic dinosaur head on the top of their head, and that's the dinosaur in itself. So puppeteering is definitely a job that is in the entertainment, film, and TV industry, and it basically just goes to show how advanced certain things like that are.
You're probably used to seeing stunt performers running, jumping, and flying, but another surprising part of the job description: being invisible. These crew members dress head to toe in either green or blue, depending on whether they're filming in front of a blue or green screen. So it's easier to remove them in post production. They're often used to give actors references when working with a fully CG character. In The Invisible Man, this one gave Elizabeth Moss someone to interact with during
Very
this
good
fight
movie.
scene. You can also see them filling in for creatures on the set of live action films like The Jungle Book and Dumbo. But they're not always playing a specific character. Sometimes they help with special effects like flying scenes. The suits also let them hide in plain sight so they can steer the performer who's strapped into wires or a tuning fork.
Before we continue, it may seem a little weird there. That is interesting to me because when you saw Angelina Jolie in Maleficent, I would assume, yes, they're just using machinery, but I guess to a certain extent, they need people to maneuver. And then it becomes that more than one person has to maneuver this person flying and things like that. The other ones like Jungle Book and Dumbo, as you may have saw, uh, I have seen that before. If you all know of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, the director James Gunn has his brother Sean Gunn as a stand-in for Rocket Raccoon. And he's literally wearing a green unitard, and he doesn't speak because it is voiced by Bradley Cooper later on, as they probably added in the film. But you have things like that where that is a job. You wear a green suit, either acting as an animal or being a part of the special effects, like what you saw there with Angelina Jolie. So let's go to this gentleman with the great white beard yelling, and I think I might know what this is. So let's keep watching.
People don't scream as often in real life as they do in movies. Quite simply, it's exhausting. An actor can risk losing their voice after just a few takes. So, scream artists like Ashley Peldon and Scott White are hired to take off some of the burden. Professional scream artists come in during post production of a film or show to dub the sound of screams. And getting the perfect scream involves first nailing the emotion of the scene. Then they'll do what's called chasing the scene, in which they'll watch the given sequence from start to finish, adding in any effort sounds in sync with the action. A scream artist will also frequently dub the scream of a recognizable actor, so they'll need to match them as closely as possible, like when Scott did Tom Hardy's screams and grunts for the motorcycle chase in Venom. Planning and
So that is interesting because I know people do voiceover and they take over kind of like the sound effects and creating sound after a movie's done. And one would assume that a person ends up having to speak or actually try to scream because, oh, they're acting so good, look how well they're screaming. But in this case, not all the actors or people scream, and you get people like this doing that kind of work. So pretty cool. And this one, it looks like CGI, and we'll see what it is exactly.
storyboarding the biggest blockbusters is now more advanced and detailed than ever before thanks to previs artists. Previs artists create a rough CG version of a given action sequence based on the script and the director's vision. This allows the crew to experiment and work out any kinks before shooting. The third floor's previs artists started mapping out the tone and action for Avengers Endgame 3 years before the film's release. And the bus fight from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings would not have been possible without the previs artists working out the exact movements and angles the bus would move at on set. Previs artists can also make the final product more realistic. For example, this previs put together by Frame Store from Gravity helped the film nail down realistic zero-G movements.
So there we go for big blockbuster movies. Even though they end up getting filmed and whatnot, you still have to plan them out. And to some, I don't know if any of my people that know this term, storyboards, it would be written on little index cards and every single thing. And in a moment of one scene where 10 things happen in this one scene, and now as we see, it's also done CGI. And for something like an Avengers Endgame, which turned out to be a major blockbuster film making $1 billion, ends up becoming something that they have all these actors and it's pre-planned out on computer even before it's even filmed. And if you've all seen the movie Gravity, it's a really good film. Check it out. A lot of it is shown in space, and to make sure everything looks legit or looks properly done, excuse me, it ends up being that they have to make sure the way Sandra Bullock is going through there with George Clooney. I don't want to spoil it. Really good movie. Like I said, check it out. And that's a job that it would be part of before anything gets made. And those are the kind of people that do that sort of stuff. Let's keep going.
Hair is one of the most challenging elements to animate in 3D, as there's simply so much of it to control at once. So many of Walt Disney Animation Studios' animators spend their time making lifelike human hair. Like with water and cloth, hair needs to be simulated so each strand moves together in an automated and realistic way. One of their biggest challenges is animating how someone's hair interacts with the elements, such as light, shadows, and the wind. This is especially the case with curly hair, which needs to retain its shape even as it moves and interacts with the world. So they built a program called Quicksilver that gave them the ability to both rig and groom Maui and Moana's curly hair in Moana. This meant they could put their hairdos into a starting pose,
Attention to
and Quicksilver
detail.
could determine how it would move from there. Fast forward to 2021, when they featured every category of hair texture from 1A to 4C in Encanto.
That right there. And the next time, if you watch an animated film that's come out within the past 3 years, just put on one of those. And this is something on hair. Insider has done other ones of other details in movies. Look outside, or look when a character is outside and you see the trees moving within the wind, the water. They have gone that far to, as you see, that many of all these different characters here in a film like Encanto, of the detail of just hair. And sometimes for some of us, we don't. I don't realize it because I'm enthralled in the story, but it goes to show that they want to go from A to Z on every single point of detail of a part of a film, making sure that it gets done. So that's a job that my computer's acting weird. Sorry. A job that gets done. And let's keep going.
They even expanded their library of curly hair, making even tighter coils for Mirabelle. The best hair animators can also bend physics in order to follow the rules of a specific animated world. For example, Tangled's animators never let Rapunzel's hair fall in a straight line, and instead gave it lots of rhythmic curves. The 2019 horror film Saint Maud features a cockroach in a prominent role, and the roach that got the starring role, she worked with animal trainer Grace Dickinson, who helped her hit all of her marks. Getting roaches to perform on camera means Grace plays to their strengths. Roaches are scent oriented and love sweet things, so she'll have them go from point A to point B, where they will be rewarded with jelly, nectar, or honey water. Roaches are great on camera as they have a calm demeanor, but sudden light or temperature changes can stress them out, and those elements can't always be easily controlled on set. So Grace also knows how to keep them calm. The key? Pampering them. To keep her roaches from dropping a stink bomb or flying away, she always makes sure to have a mini habitat with her on set. This lets the roaches relax until they're ready for their next take.
And wow, of all things, I've known in movies, I've known in throughout history, there's animal trainers who train all kinds of animals, large animals. I That last one is interesting to me. Nothing against bugs. I'll mind my business, they mind their business. But I would have least have known I wouldn't have thought that there's a job to train cockroaches. And yeah, as you saw, there's probably even more surprising jobs that are out there in movies and TV shows. You all make sure you comment below. Let me know what of things that you have found that wasn't described here in this video. Would you be interested in working in something like this? What was surprising? What was something you may have already known or heard of? Comment below. Thank you all for watching this. Please be sure to subscribe, like, share. Check out Insider's rest of their videos. Like I said, they have a lot of behind the scenes stuff of how things get done. And thank you all again for watching. I'll see y'all later. Bye bye.